A huge warm welcome to you all. This is our first series of our 3 CPDs for the Craft School Material World. These CPDs are developed to really enhance your time with us on the programme and to support you to deliver craft school confidently and with excitement in your education settings. All 3 of the CPD sessions will be recorded so you can revisit them anytime. And for each session, we invite specialists to share their insights, either on sustainability or craft education, alongside a craft professional who will deliver a make-along workshop with us. For those of you who are taking part live, we'll have the opportunity to share what you've been making, some discussion, Q&A, and please feel free to use the chat feature throughout, and Faith and I will keep an eye out on the chat. You can ask your questions throughout, so please feel free to share any opinions or any questions throughout this CPD. Each CPD will be based on one of the key themes, so reclaim and reuse, creative mending, and renewable materials. Alongside these CPDs, we also have monthly drop-in sessions. These are our teacher support sessions, and they're more of an informal space where you can talk about different aspects of your project, your experiences, and we offer some detailed sort of walk through what to expect throughout this program, and also just a friendly opportunity for you to share your practice and ask some questions. Our next teacher support session is on the 10th of December. So today's theme is reuse and reclaim. Our first presenter today will be Sam Kendall. Sam is the head of school learning at the Eden Project. We are so lucky to have you today. Thank you, Sam. And the Eden Project is, of course, our partners for our second year, this year's Material World. Following on from Sam, we'll also have a make-along session with our artist, Liaqat Rasul. But until I introduce you to Liaqat, it's over to you, Sam. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, screen share face that was. Is it up? Are you on with my pictures? Brilliant. Thanks for having me, everybody. Great turnout. How lovely to have you all here. Apologies that I haven't got a backdrop of the Eden Project on a Cornish evening. Our site's actually closed for a few days this week while we do a massive Christmas get-in, and I just thought it might be a bit lonely sat there on my own at 5:30. So you've just got my peace lily just as a kind of, you know, cipher for the Eden Project, I'm afraid. So I want to tell you a little bit about our place and about an Eden Project kind of way into thinking about sustainability, and those two things kind of weave together. I'm also very pleased that we're on reclaim and reuse, because obviously Eden Project is built in a reclaimed quarry. So I'll start with a little bit of history. So 25 years ago, the Eden Project looked like this. Big white wet muddy hole in the middle of Cornwall, a china clay quarry reaching the end of its economic life. Pretty rubbish place to try and build a global garden, to be honest. No, you know, 20 metres below the water table, very limited biodiversity, not even any soil. But in the late 90s, inspired by the coming millennium, a group of people came together and fundraised and planned and engineered and designed and grew, made 85,000 tonnes of soil, and created this place called the Eden Project in Cornwall. And for me, actually, that's one of the kind of really powerful sustainability messages of the Eden Project, is that origin story, because it speaks to the fact that actually humans don't always trash things. That's not a given, you know, and the Eden Project proves that people, good-hearted, good-minded people can bring their diverse skills together to work with nature, with the grain of nature, and leave things better than they found them. So it's changed a bit over the last 20 something years. We're 25 net in 2026, we'll be 25. So we're coming up for our kind of silver jubilee, goodness me. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what's there. So it's obviously our bird's eye view. I would have been talking to you from this spiky building over on the right of that image had I been still in the office. But we have got, when we opened, it was the largest rainforest in captivity. We've been caught up by a few kind of big swimming pools effectively since then, I think. But you can explore the tropical parts of the world and explore stories of people's dependence on and interdependence with nature through the plants that are very familiar to us in terms of the product. So we've got chocolate and sugar and rice and pineapple, all sorts growing in there, but actually the plants and the places and the people who grow those plants in those places perhaps are really far removed from us. So there's something about kind of a bit of disguise removing going on about our connections to the world around us. There's an absolutely delightful Mediterranean biome full of plants, not only from the Mediterranean, but also from other places with a Mediterranean climate, like a little bit of Western Australia and the southwest bit of South Africa, and all set in these glorious global gardens. And we bring the place to life with exhibits and entertainment and stories and storytellers, workshops, activities, education programs, and particularly art. We use art and as a way to tell our stories, because one of the real touchstones for us is that sustainability isn't just a project of the head, it's absolutely a project of the heart, and art is a really brilliant way to engage with people heart first. So, you know, again, at the Eden Project, we don't think, you know, we totally acknowledge that things are a bit tricky in the world, but that's not maybe where we start. And actually what we often start with is kind of awe and wonder. Look, this place is amazing. We're all spinning around the sun at 65,000 miles an hour at the moment. Pretty extraordinary. There's a metal core going through the middle of our lovely blue planet that means that the sun's radiation is deflected and we don't all get sizzled. We all breathe about 20,000 breaths a day, and then we go to bed and we wake up the next day and there's still exactly the right amount of oxygen. Such a great planet, you know? And we can maybe think of it as our spaceship, or maybe that's not even a metaphor. Actually, we are, you know, the only thing that comes in is light and heat, and the only thing that goes out is heat. This is kind of it. And maybe there's a little bit of sustainability thinking about what it would be like to behave as responsible crew on this gorgeous spaceship Earth, rather than slightly leery passengers on their way back from the Costa del Sol or something. But as you know, I'm not going to, you know, go into it. That glorious spaceship is having, you know, a few technical issues at the moment. We've polluted the air, we've poisoned the water, we've degraded the soil, biodiversity is in crisis, the climate also, and we seem to be doing a good job of making ourselves unhealthy and unhappy in the process. It's not great. And our understanding of this at Eden is that these things are all interconnected. You know, this isn't a set of separate problems. This is a set of interconnected problems, which is tricky because it's then, you know, like that. It also means it gives us lots of different places to start. But ultimately, this is a crisis of disconnection. We've become disconnected from nature and its cycles and her ways. And so the answer for us is a project of connection. So to do that, we say this: the Eden Project demonstrates and inspires positive action for the planet through our destinations, through our education programs, through our community projects, through our conservation efforts. And as I said at the top of the session, we can talk to that because we've done it. We've done a transformation. We've done that thing. We've reused and reclaimed in quite a spectacular way. But the spaceship model is quite interesting. Sometimes we talk about our place as Spaceship Eden, you know, because actually we've got this little closed system where we can run those experiments to demonstrate that positive change is possible. And we try and really embed sustainability principles and sustainability thinking into everything we do. So I'll give you an example from here. That big weird bit of machinery in the middle of it is a giant drill, which we use to drill 4.5 kilometers down into the earth to where the rocks are hot enough to heat up the water we send down the drill hole. And when it comes back up, it's hot enough to heat our biomes and our other greenhouses. So a totally renewable form of energy. So we're demonstrating quite radical ways. And also, you know, exploring how you engage with different kinds of people, different groups of people. 40% of people who come to our big concerts in the summer, our Eden sessions, say they wouldn't have come to Eden if we hadn't put the concerts on. So if it's all like interwoven like that, that's like, oh, well, that's handy, isn't it? Where do I start teaching and unpacking that? Well, there's loads of tools and frameworks to help us. And this is one of our absolute favourites. It's called the Development Compass Rose. It's not ours. It was developed by the there's a lot of develops in this sentence, developed by the Development Education Association back actually in the late 90s. And it's such a great tool for getting into sustainability and sustainability thinking. So we've got our lovely compass with north, south, east and west, but actually we layer on, they're not the directional points of the compass, they are different mindsets and ways of getting into issues and stories in a way that will help us perhaps take on board the more than human world a little bit more than we're used to. So yes, it's about the economy, yes, it's about people, but actually it's also about nature and also about justice. You know, who decides, who's making the decisions on all of these things? So a super simple example, just to kind of show you how this lands. I shall give you a moment or two to think on this. You can type in the chat if you like. So say in the middle of our development compass rose, we put a bar of chocolate as our thing to think about. What questions could you ask? We've given you a few to start with. What issues and stories could you get into shaped by this framing of the nature, economy, society, who decides of the development compass race? So just have a little, you can have a little scribble, have a little think. If you want to chat, that's great, but you know, it's nearly tea time on a Tuesday afternoon. It's fine. Cool. So I'm sure you've thought a thought or two. Absolutely. Yeah. Who's produced the cocoa beans? What else is going on in their life? How far have the ingredients travelled? Where do they even grow? What used to grow there before we grew them? What about the other ingredients in the chocolate bar? Is that milk? Where does the milk come from? Are the cows having a nice time? You know, you just, from something as simple as a bar of chocolate, you can get into just kind of massive stuff. And it's a really great thinking tool to do that. You know, it's put a mobile phone at the middle of that and start unpicking that. Put building a new Eden project in the middle of that, and you could have some really, really interesting conversations. And certainly anything, you know, any conversations that you're having about materials or about process or about, you know, choices with your young people as a part of this project, I would really recommend using this as a structure to get into some of those issues. Great, thanks for adding your comments. That's really lovely. So yeah, this goes across everything that we do. As I say, I've already talked about the geothermal, the really boring silver looking tube in the back of one of those pictures is actually a really cool part of our circular economy sustainability story, because we put all of our food waste from the Eden Project in there. You can imagine there's a lot of pasty waste at the Eden Project, odd bits of cream tea. That all goes into one end of that giant composter. It mushes around for 6 weeks and we get compost out of the other end that we use to grow more plants in our gardens. The shop is a real example. You know, all of Eden Project's part of this story. The food that we sell in our restaurants, the products that we sell in the shop have all been thought through and balanced up using these kind of principles. How does this work with nature? Is it value for money? Who's it making happy? Who's it upsetting? And how are we going to decide all of these things? So, last couple of slides and then I am done. We have done, or our colleague Tom has done a lot of work recently developing a couple of really great lesson plans. They're kind of older primary, lower secondary suitable, I would say, which introduce these kind of key sustainability concepts and the thinking tool that is the development compass raise, and create some really great scenarios to practice using those thinking skills. So this one, Our Sustainability School, does exactly what it says on the tin. It's an introduction to some of those concepts that I've just shared, and there's an activity about should Eden Project sell bottled water on its site, and using the development compass raise to weigh up the pros and cons of that. This one we're really pleased with because it takes that bit of thinking a step further, gets into thinking about our music concerts and what the kind of impacts and the benefits of putting on an event like that would be. And there's a really lovely activity where the young people get to pitch for various food vendors, which they have rated and ranked according to a set of sustainability criteria. So they're not craft or art lesson plans, but they are really great introductions to introducing these ideas about thinking in sustainable ways. So that's it. I'm sticking around the whole time, so if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat or pipe up. Thanks for having me today.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for your expertise, and also just reminding that it's positive action led with the heart. And I think having that at the forefront really reminds you of why we do projects lead with sustainability. So thank you so much for sharing. I wonder if anybody has any questions or reflections before I introduce you to our make-along activity. Feel free to have them, pop them in the chat. So we have one question. Do you have an education outreach to schools further afield than England?
We do, but only online. So we've got a programme of live workshops that we can deliver for schools anywhere. We have got up very early in the morning to do them for schools in Malaysia and things like that. And also for big groups of young people, it doesn't work with a class, but for big groups of young people, we have also got live streams from the rainforest biome that we can offer as well. About as far from Cornwall as you can get, though, Laurie, and still be in the British Isles. All that stuff is on our website, edenproject.com/schools. You'll find everything that we have for teachers and for young people as well.
That's fantastic. I think that's one of the great things about all of this being online and accessible to everybody everywhere. So yeah, thank you. That's a really great question. It's good to know that all of this is online and can be found on the website as well. Okay, well, up next, we have got Liaqat Rasul, who will lead our make-along session. And on the in the chat, we've popped in the resources that you'll need for the make-along activity. If you don't have your resources with you right now, do not fret. Since this is recorded, you can come back to it anytime. And yeah, we're delighted to have Liaqat Rasul today, who will be talking about the theme of reusing and reclaiming in his own practice, and to offer us some starting points and hopefully inspire us on how we might approach this project in our own education setting. So Liaqat, when you're ready, over to you.
Hi, my name's Liaqat Rasul, and I'm a collage and mixed media artist. And I was going to tell you a bit about my sort of story, because I kind of I studied fashion and had a fashion business for 10 years, and I was producing and making stuff out of India. So I lived in India for 10 years and worked with quite a lot of embroiderers and craftspeople, hand block printers, also machine embroidery, quilting, lots of creating fabrics together. And of course, living in India was such an inspiration. And yeah, so there's lots of sustainability processes that are just part of Indian culture. Like, for instance, if you had a whole load of saris, they would just bunch up the saris into layers of 4 or 5, and then create that as a fabric. But then they would create a running stitch through these saris, which is the running stitch is called kanta, and these blankets are called gudris. But I think they've been doing for like at least 200 years as a means to be resourceful about fabric that they don't use anymore. And I think that's just really beautiful that they've just been doing it anyway, before this awareness of sustainability. And when I used to get paid from a designer in Calcutta, the envelopes, the paper was quite bad quality. So what they would do is, before they were made into envelopes, they would glue fabric with PVA onto the paper. So this envelope that I'd received my wages in was just incredibly beautiful, because it was just an envelope with a fabric lining, but it was glued to the paper. And both those things, I think, have actually inspired my practice. Like 15 years on, I still think of those ideas, and I still think of that idea of creating beautiful things in a very low-tech way. So through embroidery and just gluing paper and fabric together and making something out of it is really lovely. So I had my business for 10 years. So from 1999 to 2009, I had my clothing business, and I liquidated in 2009. And then I was completely lost and completely fell flat on my face. And I think I was in shock, actually. And I kept on applying for lots of jobs and not getting them. And I just worked in a pub for 5 years and felt really low, I think. Felt like my confidence was very low. I really sort of didn't like the business of fashion. I didn't like how well, it's really hard, it's really difficult. It's also one of the worst businesses to be in terms of sustainability. I think it's the top one in the world. So yeah, I kind of decided that I wasn't going to go back into fashion, and I still really love textiles. I worked in them for 5 years before I kind of found my direction or find some enthusiasm for something. And I think whilst looking at going to see lots of art exhibitions, I decided that I would start creating things. So I very slowly started making collages. If it was my friend's birthday, I'd make them a card or a piece of art. Here is kind of, I don't know if you can see that very well, but these are just sort of found materials, like a cloth and packaging tape, and some bias binding here. And this entire line is just a piece of cardboard that I've just layered. Like, there's like 4 layers of cardboard. Then I've just wrapped it round with different materials that I like. There's a t-shirt I don't know if you can see that very well, but not very good at it.
You want to hold it.
I think it's okay. I think there's a reflection. So, but there is wool, there's a piece of t-shirt, there's a bit of I call that navard, but it's like webbing that you use for upholstery. There's a plastic bag, there's some cable ties, there's some silk thread, some cotton thread, more bias binding, some wool, lots of tissue paper, glitter card. So they're the sort of materials that I used for this piece, and I still use those materials. This is another piece, which is, I don't know if you can see, but there's an envelope here with fabric glued onto the envelope, which is a reference to the envelope that I got my wages paid into and presented to me. It was just always really lovely to be paid. So this is when I worked on 2D for like a year or two. So this is like 2014, 2015. So I just wanted to give you a timeline on things because, you know, I graduated in 1999. We're in 2024 now. And however frustrating it is to find your way, it's really important that you allow the time for things to reveal itself to you in your art practice, or even if you don't have an art practice, if you're just trying things, it's just really important not to put yourself under huge amounts of pressure and to be playful and to think of process rather than the end game. I think a lot of workshops that I do, especially specifically with children, I feel like if they feel like it's not perfect in their eyes, I don't know what they see as being perfect, but they quite often get upset, and I've noticed that quite a lot, and I feel like if there was an emphasis on being playful instead of the end game, then that would really hopefully help them enjoy the art project or the thing that they're doing. This is what I do a lot of now, which is that so I do these mobile collages which are suspended on thread. So I go from 2D now onto 3D. I do a lot of this 3D work. So I'll start the meditation now. Yes, cool. So we're just going to sit for 5 minutes, and we're going to close our eyes and meditate. And if we just start now, is that okay? we can slowly open our eyes. And we're just going to sort of begin with our, hopefully there's an A5 piece of card that we can use as a template, or just cut one out. So I just wanted to draw a line at the top here. And what I've done is, with a marker, just draw some lines all the way down vertically, because later on what we'll do is we will start cutting along those lines. So if we just start, I'm going to start my own A5. We can do this together. So all I'm doing is folding this piece of paper. This is A4, so that's really helpful. So we've got our template here. So I've got like a pile of stuff here, just to show you. I've got tissues, wrapping paper, bubble wrap, plastic bag, magazine, a bag, a sandwich, packaging thing. So I think like another plastic bag, acetate. I think what's kind of nice is just to kind of scrunch your materials a bit and just sort of see how they feel. And like the cardboard's quite difficult to scrunch. So this is kind of, it's quite nice to be in touch with your materials and to feel them. Just to connect with what you've got in front of you. Because these are things that essentially are in all of our kind of recycling bin. Like nothing is specifically bought here. I mean, I might have some nice paper in A4 randomly, some leftover tissue paper. But essentially, what we want to sort of think about is our consumer behavior and our day-to-day relationship with, like, for instance, you know, I've included the sandwich pack here. So, you know, that's, I think it's really important to pick up the things that you think, oh no, that won't do. Well, in fact, it's really important to pick up things like a sandwich packet that's been wrapped. To think of its journey, think of the materials that are being used, and do we really need, you know, a sandwich that's packed in this certain way, or just to start considering, you know, making your own sandwiches and taking them to work, or buying something that doesn't involve so much packaging. So if we kind of choose sort of what I've suggested in the brief is if we try and cut half amount of plastic stuff and half amount of paper stuff. So if we grab our template, our A5 template, and what we're going to do is simply just draw around all the different materials and then cut them out. So you can either draw first and then cut. And then again, just take your time in sort of presenting all these different materials. And if something's scrunched down, I want you to sort of try and still draw over it. Because I think some materials can seem unappealing or a bit difficult, but I think we should try and include them in the mix. And the variety of materials in plastics, papers, and card will hopefully alert you of all the different materials that we use every day, and you know what happens to those materials once we've used them. Where do they go? This one I think I'm just going to so we want to do about between 5 and 8 different materials, so that you create. We're going to layer them up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to do 2 more. Also, like when you have like an envelope, I think it's really nice just to undo it. Because you have more paper for a start, and also you get to see how an envelope is designed or what the shapes look like. And also, I don't need to be like massively precise. I just want to sort of and it's really mindful to sort of give yourself a little task of drawing things out and then just to be able to go through them and cut them out. I always think it's always very nice to be in touch with all the different textures of the materials you're cutting, because through touch you can also design. It might not sort of present itself to you immediately, but if you remember the texture or something, then yeah, yes. So we've got, I'm just gonna, right. So say if you've got some room. So we've got our A5. I'm just going to draw a line. And then draw my scissor lines. This bit is a little bit prescribed, but it will just be helpful when we cut them out later. We just get some skin tape just to help secure those pieces in place. So along this line here, we're just going to staple. And I'm actually going to get some more masking tape just to keep all these different papers down. And I have got a mix of different papers and plastic. Right, so the next bit now is just to cut all the way through. And sometimes it might be a bit tricky because you've got quite a lot of different materials together. But that will also make you understand that different materials have different capabilities, and some things might be harder to cut. I love this idea of plastic and paper and packaging all together, creating this really kind of quite thick fringe. And this is actually, what we're doing here is actually creating a mood board, which is something that you could use as a starting point for lots of different projects. And by cutting through all the different stripes, some ideas just might come your way, or be thinking about a problem that you need to solve. And I love masking tape as well, because masking tape really helps you to kind of fix things in place, and then you can just take the masking tape off afterwards. So it can be a really supportive utensil for creativity, masking tape. It helps you to try out different ideas. So now we can undo masking tape on both sides. One, two, three. Right, refashioning. So this is the stick. So what's really nice is that we've created this textile or sculpture or whatever you want to call it. It's really lovely. I mean, look at the way the I think that's really nice, the way that the envelope window has randomly created something. So what we're going to do next is masking tape this to your piece of, it can be a piece of wood or gardening stick. But this really kind of, like, the sound is really lovely. by sticking it on a stick, you've now increased the potential of what you've just made, because you can see it differently. Like you could have it in a vase, just have it in your room, and it's just like this really lovely kind of object. You know, you can twiddle it around. I think it's got a really beautiful sensory quality to it too. And you know, put it next to your ear, it's weirdly calming. But I think it's a lovely starting point. It doesn't have to have a name, it doesn't have to have a job, it doesn't have to you know, it doesn't have to have a specific home. And I think just taking stuff from your recycling bin, analysing those materials in a very basic way, which I don't think we do enough of. And I think that's why the meditation really helps as well, because the list of materials for sustainability are always the same materials, but that doesn't mean that we should get frustrated with them. There's still opportunity to play with those materials, like a plastic bag, an envelope, a packaging thing, something to do with sandwiches, you know, stuff that arrives through your letterbox, newspapers, acetate. Think of the qualities of those items and see how you can be as creative as possible. You know, if you say to me, I'm bored of those materials, well, make me understand how they won't be boring. Create something that will be really, you know, that you haven't seen before. And see where you go with it. You know, just sort of look at a material and try and see an opportunity. You know, it's really nice, I think, if you start knowing about your base materials and understanding them. So here are a few bits that I did earlier. Again, we've got all the different materials. Then I've made an actual, I've got myself one of those long arm staplers, so I cut everything to A5. So every single piece of paper is completely different. And I've just stapled it in the middle. And I've just made it into a notepad. And it's just like a really lovely mixed media notepad. And it's not even stapled in the right place. It's slightly sloppy and sort of, you know, but I think that's fine. I think that's really, you know, consider something like this for a Christmas gift for somebody, as opposed to buying something. Or making lots of them, and they could be like garlands. Or you can cut them sort of, you know, you can create these little fringes, which might be quite nice. Yeah, this is really lovely. Get some string. Again, I'm just using some string that I've collected in my studio that's been used for something else. Don't feel like it's you know, been used for something else, so don't reuse it. There we go. More, I mean, you know, if you've got like a space somewhere, you can make this as a group project together and create this garland just to have around you, which would be really, really, really sweet. And you know, the acetate is doing something nice with the light and reflecting. So again, there's lots of opportunity, and the movement's really sweet.
It's really nice to actually just have a look at the chat, because there's a really nice idea from Jessica. She's written layers of life, layers of history related to the layers of the earth, atmosphere, so many ideas. It's just so inspiring, actually, just how putting materials together and folding them and finding a different way to work, allowing the material to work with you. It's just so inspiring, and I'm watching this, genuinely cannot wait to go and rummage through my recycling bin. It's just, I just love the way that even when you were shaking it through your ear to your ear, and it creating the sounds of almost like the ocean, you know, when you put the shell to the ear and you're using all the mixed media and sensory approaches. I think for younger children in particular, it's a really lovely approach to look at it that way. So thank you. I have a question whilst you're making. You've got a, I'd like to see, you know, please do continue, but one question that comes up to me, especially when you're working with younger children, they have this fear of making a mistake, or they have this fear of it failing. How would you approach that in the classroom? How would you approach that? Because when we're making, and we kind of, as adults, maybe we are able to let go of that part of ourselves, but if this was something that in the classroom you were finding that your learners were finding it difficult to kind of take risks, what advice would you give them, and what would you say to them to kind of encourage them to keep being more experimentative with their making?
I think like at the beginning of the session, there are different aspects to the process of making stuff. So even if you run out of ideas and you've still got the materials, like even if you were to take the kids away from the table and have all those materials on the floor and start throwing them around and creating a sense of play through, I mean, that's like imagination, and that's evoking things. And you could, you know, they could be throwing the materials to each other as children, or creating scrunchy little balls and catching them. And you know, there's a lot to unpick in the way that our education has been delivered over the years. But I think we do need to start being quite innovative, but keep it really low tech as well. You don't need to like spend loads of money. You just need to sort of interact and be playful, and hopefully, you know, by playing with those materials right at the beginning and creating some movement within yourself and with your colleagues or your pupils or whatever, you're hopefully creating some sort of energy that people are distracted, and in that distraction might present an idea. And also, I think it's really nice as well if everybody sort of presents everything on a white wall or on a piece of stick or on a washing line, and let them be there. And then maybe in a week's time, they can come back to it as well. That's really important. You don't need to have the answers right immediately.
Yeah, not needing to have the answers right immediately. I think that really does underpin and echo a lot of the make first approach as well, and allowing yourself and your students time to sort of let it be material led, tinker, change your mind, start again, start 2 projects at once. And I think, yeah, you've kind of displayed to us how that is possible with materials that you can find in your recycling box. Yeah, that's really, really inspiring. And it's given me lots of questions as well. Like if we have got children who might need specific needs, I know that you've also given us some staplers, for example, that might be useful for them to use to access to put things together. You've said masking tape, which is really, really useful and accessible. And also, I remember you mentioning as well that these materials could be cut before the lesson, or they could be done together with partners. Are there any other sort of top tips that you might want to give if this is something that after today's session, tomorrow morning, you'd like to try this out with your class? Any other top tips for the classroom environment?
I think like just keeping it really kind of simple, and even if you create things from a previous art class, whether they can play with them and move on, maybe see them as a prop, as a way of developing them as well. I mean, I did workshop recently with quite a few less able children, and quite often they just need to react to a certain material that you don't know what they're going to identify with. So it's really important that they explore, like even if they scrunch up a piece of plastic like this might really work for them. Yet something like this that's quite sophisticated might just really be annoying. But it's sort of like giving an attendee that freedom of allowing them to be with something, and they might just like scrunching newspaper, and that idea of just scrunching is enough. And that's what I mean about we need to retrain our brains to realize that actually has power and is really valuable. And it's about slowing down for all of us. And I think the meditation, is really quite a nice thing to do to help you to get into that gear.
That's lovely. Yeah, thank you so much. And it being more about the process. I think that's the one key takeaway from your workshop today. It really being about the process and how you interact with the materials as opposed to the end result, which is echoed in the Make First approach. So it's really lovely to see it in practice. I'm going to stop now. I could ask you questions forever, but I know that you'd like to conclude your session in the beautiful way that you do with a meditation. Maybe during the meditation, we've got some things to meditate on throughout the session. So I'm going to hand it back over to you before you hand it back over to me. I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to do 3 minutes meditation. If we could slowly open our eyes.
Thank you so much. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. We've got a few more minutes to answer some of your questions. I just want to actually touch upon your sort of meditations and the mindfulness moments that you have at the start and at the end of the practice, because it really does encapsulate what you're doing in that time of making and working with your materials as a very special time. And I think, especially with schools and how much we kind of want to allow children to have those pockets of mindfulness moments, it's really important that when they're working with material, in order to allow it to be quite special and tangible, that they are really grounded. And the act of trying to allow yourself to get back to concentrating on being quiet is so important. And when you are working and interacting with materials, in order to understand how they're responding to you, you almost need to be at a level of calm, and the debris of your mind needs to be settled. And children need this a lot too, because they're probably coming from one subject off to another. They've got issues going on in the playground, and having that capsule, you create a really special moment for the next 45 minutes, for the next half hour, for the next hour. We are going to start with a meditation so that we really hold this space dearly. We enjoy the process, and then you end the session with a beautiful meditation, even though sometimes it can be quite uncomfortable and difficult. You end it to mark and signify the end of the practice, and then you can carry on with whatever you're doing. So I just think, thank you for demonstrating that today and allowing us to experience that with you. If there are any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we do have a share, if you'd like to share that with us, Faith, of just maybe some short reflections. So this is just an exercise for us, a 3-word reflection on how you're feeling, maybe about the CPD, how you're feeling about the workshop, the make-along, how you're feeling after the talk that we had from Sam from the Eden Project. Just any reflections. They're anonymous, and it really gives us a nice idea to sit and kind of reflect on the CPD today. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask. It's really nice to hear your thoughts. We've got connected, reflective, creative. Thank you. I still got Jessica's comment in my ears of it being layers, so many different layers of life. That's really touched me. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, layers, tactile, materiality, playful, joyful. Thank you for your comments on the Slido. Feel free to pop them in as I say my thank yous, and give you some time if you do want to ask some more questions. So thank you so much, Sam, for your time. Thank you so much, Liaqat, for joining us and providing a really inspiring session full of your expertise, and hopefully we can take some of this back into our learning environments and apply them in our practice. I also want to say thank you to you, teachers and education providers, for joining us. We hope you feel inspired to take this back and practice it with your children. And lastly, just to say thank you to our partners, the Eden Project, Hobbycraft, NSEAD and Access Art. And to let you know that our next support session is on Tuesday the 10th from 4 till 5, and this is going to be the informal session where you come in and ask any questions and share your practice. Our second CPD is in January, on Wednesday the 22nd, where we will be exploring the theme of creative mending with textile artist Ophelia Dos Santos. So you've got lots of thank yous in the chat. Oh, Laurie has asked a really, really good question. Absolutely. Can we share our creations? We would love to. So let's feel free to. Oh, Laurie, I love it. Thank you. Let's have a look. Thank you, Faith. Now I can see everybody's screen. Would you like to talk us through your process,
Oh, I
Laurie?
love them.
I just was playing. And this one was what you asked us to do. I thought we were going to weave actually, but I really I didn't have very exciting materials, but it's the noise. It's lovely. And I think that kids would enjoy that. I also thought about, I did one with all red and found some more sort of bits and pieces. But I thought, could I actually even make a brush out of that? And do something with that. But this I kind of played with the stuff. I have a lot of it, but I kind of encased it, and I had the fringe, but of course it can't go anywhere because it's actually.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
And then there are the bits that you can see through. I thought that was really nice. But that's me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Would anybody else like to share? Oh, I can see Kirsty, you've got some. You're on mute. Thank you, Kirsty. Yeah, you were on mute, but hey, who's to say we're having technical difficulties too, so we're in it together. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anybody else who'd like to share? Okay, well, we're going to end here. Hopefully you have enjoyed this session as much as I have hosting it. Really look forward to seeing you in our teacher support sessions coming up and our next CPD. And good luck with the challenge ahead and see you very soon. Take care.